argue that when people insist that biological sex is strictly dichotomous and immutable, they're most likely expressing the fact that they perceive the world that way.
The windows all fogged up. You've made up some bizarre set of arguments that I've never heard in my life.
I love you, Mary.
All right, this is gonna be rough. I'm gonna try watching Julia Serano again. But yeah, let's see. So we've got trans people and biological sex. What the science says. Here we go. Attempts to delegitimize transgender lives and experiences often rely on oversimplistic claims about biological sex. Drawing on my previous writings and background as a biologist, what kind of biologist probably matters. Here I challenge these common presumptions and instead present a more holistic understanding of sex, gender, and trans people. Can't wait. Let's have a look.
Hi, I'm Julia Serano. For those who don't know me, I'm the author of several books on the subjects of sex, gender, sexuality, and social justice, including Whipping Girl, a transsexual woman on sexism and the scapegoating of femininity, Excluded, Making Feminist and Queer Movements More Inclusive, and my most recent book, Sexed Up, How Society Sexualizes.
Making feminist movements more inclusive, coming from a guy, is just... It's just wrong. It's just so wrong.
Us and how we can fight back. I also happen to be a biologist. I have a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biophysics from
biochemistry, molecular biophysics. I don't know what that means that she'll know about things like sex then. So I don't know how relevant what she's saying is.
Columbia University. And then after that, I spent 17 years as a researcher at University of California, Berkeley in the fields of genetics, evolution, and developmental biology. You can learn more about that work on my biology webpage. Because of
graphic design is her passion. There we go. Amazing.
My background, I am often asked my thoughts about the concept of biological sex and how it relates to trans people. I've discussed this to...
How can queer movements get more inclusive? They already include literally everyone. Include people that don't have a very specific political ideology. That's how. They all think the exact same way. Queer is like... It feels like aesthetic diversity, but it's actually about internal, like, homogeneousness. Homogeny. I don't know the word. Homogeny, is that the word? That's how it comes across to me. I really got a feeling of that when I was watching. It was a DJ Mule video about, like, some Palestine protest or something. And he went somewhere where there was, like, white people and black people and other people. And they all thought the same way as me. They all had the same, like, opinions as me and stuff. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about when I talk about that.
To varying extents in my previous books, in online essays, and in interviews, all of which are conveniently compiled in Biology, Sex, and Transgender People, a resource page, which you can find on Medium. I also have a talk I've presented at colleges and conferences called Biological Sex and the Pathologization of Transgender People that grapples with this issue. Here, I will strive to synthesize all that previous work into one comprehensive video. I should add that this video was made possible by my supporters on Patreon, so if you appreciate it...
Homogeneity. Oh, okay. Homogeneity. I don't know. It's only my first language. Don't worry about it.
Or my work more...
Anyway, before I got distracted. Yeah, often these people, they actually have decent, like, working knowledge of a lot of this kind of stuff. It's the way they apply that knowledge that's a problem. So she might actually be decently knowledgeable about a lot of stuff.
Generally, then please consider supporting me there. A link can be found in the show notes below. So conversations on this topic have garnered increased attention in recent years as a result of our current anti-trans moral panic and a well-coordinated
David Icke speaks at colleges. That doesn't mean shit. Yeah, true.
Anti-trans activist campaign to roll back transgender rights. Because most trans inclusion and non-discrimination laws and policies refer to people's gender, gender identity, or gender expression, anti-trans activists increasingly make appeals to biological sex in an attempt to circumvent these policies. This is why that phrase is so often invoked by conservative politicians here in the US in their attempts to ban, censor, and criminalize trans people, public accommodations, and healthcare. Similarly, so-called gender-critical activists in the UK.
Oh my God, I just want to get to the actual shit. I don't have time for this. When do we actually get to the... So much, like, pontificating about nothing. I just want to get to the actual shit.
Have championed slogans like sex not gender, sex matters, and sex-based rights. In addition to undermining existing trans inclusion and non-discrimination policies, these efforts create a false dichotomy, one that feminist scholar Sarah Ahmed critiques in her essay, Gender Critical Equals Gender Conservative. According to this false dichotomy,
Feministkilljoys.com. I don't know. Is this a good source? I don't know.
sex is supposedly real, material, immutable, natural, objective, and rooted in science, whereas gender is supposedly artificial, immaterial, and subjective, mere stereotypes and ideology.
Well, yeah, this is true. Like, gender is like the social aspects of sex. It's quite easy and simple. One of them is an immutable characteristic of every person, whether they are one or the other. The other is like social perceptions of stuff. Like, how is that wrong?
Or to paraphrase, sex is good and natural, while
Okay, this is stupid. You can't paraphrase, then don't paraphrase. That's fine. People aren't really saying sex good, gender bad. What they're trying to say is people are divided in terms of their sex. Dividing people by gender is extremely confusing and nebulous and doesn't really make any sense to do.
gender is bad and artificial. By insisting that their experiences and concerns, coded as sex, are real, anti-trans activists can then dismiss trans people's experiences and concerns, coded as gender, as
okay, this just sounds like a reason to like discount what people are saying. Oh, well, you're just saying this. You're just saying this. No, this is dumb. Can we get to the real thing, please?
fake. We are supposedly in denial or delusional. Our perspectives mere ideology and political agendas.
Well, some of them are. You're like writing off people's people's opinions without actually engaging with any of them by doing this paraphrasing shit. It's terrible argumentation. When do we get to the actual shit as well?
If this sounds somewhat familiar to you, it's because it's the exact same strategy that homophobes have.
There we go. We've got the appeal to, what is it? Guilt by association. That's the one. You made this bit up. All this stuff that you added here, you're making up based on something else that is someone's like opinion that they put out. This is ridiculous.
Long used to delegitimize lesbian, gay, and bisexual identities and experiences as bad and artificial. Over the course of this video, I will show how rigid binaries, whether they be heterosexual versus homosexual, sex versus gender, or male versus female, do not hold up to rigorous scrutiny, nor are they supported by the actual scientific evidence.
Well, none of this that you've done was scientific because you just made all of it up, so I don't know. You could draw parallels between basically anything if you want to.
If the runtime on this video seems a bit long, that's partly because I wanted to address all the talking points that anti-trans activists raise on this issue, of which there are many.
We're talking about anti-trans activists over and over again. I thought this was what the science says. I wasn't watching this for your political views. I thought you were going to teach me some science.
But it's also because the argument that they are making relies on an overly simplistic, elementary school level understanding of biological sex.
Elementary school understanding. Okay, sure.
This is why they are able to reduce this matter down to slogans and snappy answers.
Reduce to slogans, because the trans side never does that. When do we get to the fucking science? I don't give a shit about your political fucking bullshit.
In contrast,
I don't care about the words that you put into others' mouths. I care about the words that you're saying yourself. So like all this shit about anti-trans activists, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I don't care what you think about those people. I'd rather you give an actual explanation of something that actually makes fucking sense and doesn't have to have anything to do with what gender criticals are saying. Oh no.
my side of the argument is more complex, because biology and science themselves are inherently complex. To borrow an example from a different scientific field, gravity seems pretty straightforward to most. Why do we tend to perceive sex in such a simple and binary fashion?
Because there are two sexes, there are two gametes. You need a male and a female to do it, in all cases, if you want to make a baby. So in those respects, it is that. It's not just seen as that, it is that.
I discussed this matter in the first chapter of my book, Sexed Up. I begin by describing the large body of psychological and sociological research into how young children come to understand gender. After all, we don't come out of the womb seeing women and men. It's a learning process. It's usually around the ages of 1 or 2 that children become aware that some people are boys and others are girls. This has been called the gender identity or gender labeling stage. Yet, even after understanding that distinction, young children rely on very different cues than adults. largely based on gender presentation, such as clothing and hair length, rather than physical traits. And they also have a more flexible and fluid view.
Yeah, so that's something that constitutes gender. Things like clothes, things like hair length. You stereotypically associate it with one side or the other.
View of it. For instance, if you show young children a photo of a boy, then a second photo of the same boy in a dress, they will often presume that the boy's gender has changed. It's not until ages 4 through 7 that children tend to learn gender constancy, the belief that a person's
No, that's sex. When you start talking about constancy, you're talking about sex, not gender.
sex will remain the same over the course of their life. Gender constancy, the belief that a person's sex will remain the same.
How can you say gender constancy and say the belief that a person's sex? Sex and gender aren't the same thing. I'll literally sit through some fucking trans ally dickhead in a debate for half an hour just being like, yeah, well, can you at least say that gender and sex aren't the same thing? Yeah, but can you at least admit that they're not the same thing? Like, are we not just kind of conflating them here? Are they the same or are they different? It's like, I can't... It makes no fucking sense. You keep conflating the two, but then also saying that they're different. It doesn't make sense. You have to pick one and stick with it.
Same over the course of their life. Researchers back in the 1960s and 70s imagined gender constancy to be the most sophisticated stage. Although, from a trans perspective today, it seems more like an overgeneralization or faulty assumption that children in our society learn. The rest of the chapter...
Faulty assumption? Where's the faulty assumption?
Or faulty assumption that children in our society learn. The rest of the chapter...
Okay, doesn't explain, new sentence. Nice. Amazing. Love it when we do that.
discusses my personal experiences transitioning. Specifically, when I was at my most in-between stage after several months on hormones, rather than being in a gender limbo where nobody knew what to make of me, people almost always read me as either male or female, even when other people in the same room came to differing conclusions. And once a person made that determination, they invariably acted surprised or skeptical if I told them that I was actually the other sex. This happened in both directions. In other
Well, yeah, because people perceive things. Obviously.
words, once we categorize someone one way or the other, we tend to filter away any gender ambiguous or conflicting cues. This filtering process has also been described by sociologists who've studied this issue. Anyway, based on these and other experiences...
So what was the point of that then? We're just going to go back to this again, I guess? It was pointless. Yeah, we tend to filter people into one or two things. That's probably an evolutionary thing, because it turns out, as mammals, it probably helps if we understand who we can mate with. You know what I mean? That's probably like an evolutionary thing. It probably makes sense as to why people do that. Small children don't have object permanence either, so do people really disappear when we don't see them? Well, yeah.
I make the case that it's as if we have two metaphorical filing cabinets in our minds, one for male and one for female, in which we file people into immediately upon seeing them, and which makes it difficult for people to contemplate trans and non-binary people. Once again, this is all learned behavior, and thus not written.
Is it learned behavior? How so? How are we going to show that?
In stone. Some cultures have what are sometimes...
Oh no, we're just going to move on again. Amazing. You haven't shown how that is learned behavior. Like, why do these people get to say these like crazy things and then just move on? She does talk quite robotically. There's something about the kind of mouth movements that they're very kind of, I don't know, weird. There is no way this is learned behavior. I don't think it is either. I think there's a clear reason why you would kind of see someone and make that assertion as to whether you think they're male or female. Like, humans are built for reproduction. Like, there's probably a part of every dog, every deer, every cat, every whatever the fuck else that sees males and females of their own species because they need to know who to mate with. You know what I mean? Makes a whole lot of sense if you actually think about it for any length of time. The books are even worse for what it's worth. I don't doubt that at all. Who teaches us how to be male if you only have your mother in the house? That is true.
It's referred to as third genders outside of male and female.
Like, I think there's so much confusion. There's so much confusion caused by the fact that we've kind of evolved a bit beyond this kind of stuff. So there's probably a whole lot of stuff that seems very irrational, but makes a whole lot more fucking sense when you consider where we came from and where you consider that at one point reproduction was like necessary for survival, that you have to have as many kids as you can because you don't know if your tribe or your species or whatever is going to survive much longer. Who knows? We don't have that problem anymore. So there's probably a heck of a lot of things that are like evolutionary mechanisms and stuff that we don't really understand anymore because we've kind of grown out of them, because we don't really need to have kids. People can exist and just fucking do whatever the fuck they want with their lives these days because we've kind of existed past that. We've achieved a certain level of like existing that is beyond our evolution. But then we're taking that like modern existence and framing these kind of tendencies through that, right? That's how it feels to me. We're past the point where a lot of these evolutionary things are really necessary anymore. But we're still just we're taking our perception from now and looking back on those times and saying, well, hey, maybe it's actually about this, but we're biased in the sense that we exist now, not back then. So it made more sense back then. I hope that made sense. I kept getting fucking distracted. You say it was 2-year-olds when babies distinguish the sexes. I bet it's way earlier. Babies kind of have to respond differently to their mother or father. I'm not sure. It depends how you're seeing how you're seeing like them knowing their mother or father. They probably know who their mother is, like instinctively. I don't think that's the same thing as seeing sex, if that makes sense.
I also have numerous friends with children who have trans and non-binary friends, and who have no problems accepting their social gender transitions or using they/them pronouns, likely because they never fully internalize the two filing cabinets mindset.
I guess there's one way of looking at it. Jesus Christ. Oh, the reason I'm trans supportive is because I didn't internalize the two filing cabinets. Like, what?
To the same degree that many of us who grew up in previous generations have. Given all this, I'd argue that when people insist that biological sex is strictly dichotomous and immutable, they're most likely expressing the fact that they perceive the world that way.
No, that's not true. That's not how anyone sees this kind of shit. Oh, hi, Goldcat. Hi, is Sylvende. Hope you're good. Like, I don't believe this at all. I think she's way off base here.
It appears strictly dichotomous because of the two filing cabinets mindset, and they presume it to be immutable.
Like, you're applying, like, your theory post-fact. How many people have you spoken to like, understand this? Is the filing cabinets thing even really a recognized thing? Don't forget to join the Discord, except you can't because the link's wrong, but okay. Make sure you like the stream, though. Make sure you check the links in my description. You can support me on Streamlabs. You can super chat. You can check out some music I've made. You can buy. You can stream. Lots of stuff. Anyway, where are the counterexamples? List one example of a person who doesn't fit the sex binary. Well, they would say anyone with a DSD, but that's not even true, so.
Immutable because they've internalized gender constancy.
Like, the only reason you see sex as a binary is because you've internalized the concept that sex is a binary. Like, what? What is she trying to say here? People, like, regard this person highly. By the way, we need to get more subs than Julia Serano. We need that. That is necessary. Not everyone thinks sex is binary, therefore it can't be binary. Yeah, possibly. I'm trying to get my head around what she's even saying here, but it just seems ridiculous.
The fact that they perceive the world that way, previous generations have. Given all this,
like, you see the sexes as binary because you perceive the world that way. Like, that's like circular as fuck. You see what you perceive. Yeah, no shit.
I'd argue that when people insist that biological sex is strictly dichotomous and immutable, they're most likely expressing the fact that they perceive the world that way. It appears strict.
They're just saying that they perceive it that. Yeah, they do fucking perceive it that way, obviously. Maybe it runs a bit deeper than that. I don't know, man. I just don't know. This is dumb.
Dichotomous because of the two filing cabinets mindset.
Or they see sex as based on reproduction, and that the reason we have males and females is so that we can reproduce. Like mammals, because we are mammals. How many mammals don't have a sex binary? Let's list all of them right now. Go ahead.
and they presume it to be immutable because they've internalized gender constancy.
You believe in gravity because you perceive gravity. Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously you believe what you perceive. Like, that doesn't even need to be said. And this person says it as if it's the deepest thing that has ever been fucking said ever. Don't buy that for a nanosecond. Anyone who claims to have internalized non-binary is a liar. Well, no one's internalized it. Someone said, hey, I'd rather be called this, and they've agreed to call them that. Probably because it appeals to their want to be a good person. You know what I mean? We perceive reality, how limited. Oh, I know, right? Jesus. Oh, that's up there. That is fucking up there. I think people believe this because that's what they perceive. I have to keep skipping back because I'm not trying to like actually misrepresent this person, but like, I refuse to believe. Like, people think that this person is like smart and stuff. They've worked for like universities and stuff. It's mad.
Expressing the fact that they perceive the world that way. It appears strictly dichotomous because of the two filing cabinets mindset, and they presume it to be immutable.
Why would they have a two filing cabinets mindset exactly? Is it because there's two sexes? Is it because everywhere you go, when you see people, they're either men or women? Like, what am I supposed to say to this? Like, imagine you go somewhere, imagine you live somewhere where there's no non-binary people. Then all you're seeing is like binary people. So then you're probably going to perceive that there's two genders and two sexes. Like, yeah, fucking obviously. Jesus, fuck.
Because they've internalized gender constancy. And because the act of perceiving sex involves filtering away any gender ambiguous or conflicting cues, many people literally cannot see.
Is it that they filter them away? Or, like, I don't know. My counter to this would be there's probably like an evolutionary drive for this kind of shit. Because we're mammals and had to reproduce in order to be here today. Hey, Julia Serano, how are you made? How do you exist? Was it a man and a woman that made you? Were there two sexes involved? Two sets of gametes that came together?
And are thus reluctant to believe any evidence to the contrary. In addition to how we see and categorize people with regard to sex, there are different ways in which people come to make sense of observed sex differences. The predominant view of sex in our culture is essentialism, the belief that all members of a particular category, especially those categories presumed to be natural in order,
all members of a particular category share a particular set of qualities. Well, at least one quality. If you're going to categorize people, shouldn't they have at least one thing in common with each other? Otherwise, why are they categorized together?
Share a particular set of qualities, characteristics, or essence with one another. A common example is the belief that all dogs have an essence, let's call it dogness, that makes them the same as one another and different from all.
All dogs have a dogness. What? Doesn't Julia Serano do singing or poetry in her other videos? I don't know. I can't tell if this is some kind of joke that I don't understand. Be interested to hear her singing though, not gonna lie. That'd be interesting. I have a quick check and then we'll get back to it. Oh, okay, hang on. Artist soft vowel sounds. Why are you called soft vowel sounds? That's a bit grody. Okay, so she does sing. Amazing.
So speaking of classic rock and roll from the 1970s.
How hilarious would it be to mute this and then start playing Sophie Molly? I think that'd be hilarious. But I won't do that.
70s. So a bunch of us, like Polythene Pam and I and other people in the room, a few other people in the room, all met at karaoke, Dana's Karaoke, which is one of the songs of the 70s.
God, even when it's like a video like of her singing, she has to fucking prowl on for fucking ages first. Like, just get on with it. This video's like over 5 minutes long and like the song's only about 4.
At some point.
I quite like the guitar technique. It's a shame that it's being used for this, though. She's like a perfectly okay guitar player, I'll certainly say that. Can't say I'm blown away by the singing voice, but hey. Do I like Anthony and the Johnsons' old stuff? I've heard the odd song. I like the song Hope There's Someone. That's a good song.
apparently it's not uncommon for people to get off on the gender that they were assigned at birth.
Yeah, the singing is horrible. She can't sing or write, but she can play guitar. So hey, 1 out of 3.
Mommy's alright, daddy's alright, it just seemed a little weird.
Oh, it's a changed. What is it? What is it? What is it when it's a cover, but you change half the words? Yeah, this person is like weird. This is like obsessive shit. This is what happens when like you don't like the guitar. Like that kind of technique could be used interestingly. Here's the thing. I'm one of those people. I play guitar, so I feel like I should try and find like potential from it rather than just playing the same chords that everyone plays. Did you write this one? I have no idea. But, I hate the name soft vowel sounds. That's weird. That's weird, man. Weird. Yeah, like the tapping thing with the harmonics. I think that's kind of cool in a way.
The windows all fog up. 11 minutes since we stopped. I'm on the two of you don't need me here. Oh,
This is a bit Christian and the Hedgehog Boys. Yeah, definitely.
no, not exactly. This should only take a minute short. And I'll wait for you right here in the back of your car. And I'll just wait for you right here in the back of your car. The seat is damp. I fold my hand.
I can't do anymore. That's terrible. That's fucking terrible. I'm sorry. That's not good. Oh, thank you, Wednesday. Thank you so much. I get Neil Young quite often. Yeah, thank you. I've been hearing that for a long time. I haven't really listened to him much, which is the crazy part. Been learning guitar and I find myself tapping the strings a lot and wonder if I should have gotten a bass instead. I mean, you can play a guitar however you want. Like, that's the whole beauty of it. You can do what you fucking want with it. You can plug it into all sorts of shit and make it sound like all sorts. The world is kind of your oyster. So, like, I get bored very quickly if someone is just strumming the same chords, like, you know, like, because anyone can do that. Anyone can do that shit, you know?
Are animals, such as cats, who lack this imagined dogness.
Imagined, like, the differences between species are not imaginary. Like, can't you, like, what is it? You can, like, test things and find out what they are and stuff.
A particular set of qualities, characteristics, or essence with one another. A common example is a belief that all dogs have an essence, let's call it dogness, that makes them the same as one another and different from all other animals, such as
We're not the same as one another, by the way. Like, every dog is not the same. Every dog is a dog, though.
cats, who lack this imagined dogness. While this is a very pervasive psychological phenomenon, especially in young children, essentialism is not biologically accurate, as it ignores the diversity of dogs who vary in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, but they still have, like, traits. Like, oh, where are we going with this? Let's just see where we're going with this.
Plus the fact that dogs share common ancestors with wolves, and even cats and humans if you go far enough back evolutionarily. Similarly, many people harbor essentialist views of sex, that men are naturally masculine.
This is not comparable. Like, there's genetics that these dogs have in common. They developed from, like, wolves and stuff. Like, yeah. You could go far enough back and say, oh, well, it doesn't make sense then. But it does make sense because of how evolution branched off and continued to branch off. And then we started domesticating things. There's a clear distinction even between dogs and wolves, despite them being the same species. Yeah. An easy way to tell. First off, I don't think wolves bark. Also, wolves tend to have very narrow chests. Most dogs have, like, their front legs, are quite far apart. There's lots of things you can see.
Because of their innate maleness, while women feminine because of their innate femaleness.
No, who thinks this? Like, a woman is a woman because of their innate femaleness. Like, we love the circular shit here. We love the circular definitions.
Narrowly. Similarly, many people harbor essentialist views of sex, that men are naturally masculine because of their innate maleness.
Like, no, they're masculine because of their genitalia, their gonads, the hormones that they produce, the genetic information that was in whichever sperm won the fucking race. You know what I mean? It's clearly not about imagined essences. We're just making it up so that it's dumb and then tearing that down, it seems.
While women feminine because of their
Yeah, masculine is a gender term. Like, masculine is like gender. Male is like sex. They can't stop mixing up sex and gender even now.
innate femaleness. So where does this essence supposedly come from? Well, some people will invoke God or souls. Of course, they can believe this if they wish, but let's not pretend that this has anything to do with science. Other essentialists will invoke biology. During the early 1900s, when sex hormones were first discovered, some researchers thought that those molecules might be the sex essences that differentiate female from male.
Well, are they entirely wrong?
Until it was later discovered that all people have both estrogens and androgens in their systems, albeit to differing degrees.
Yeah, so are they entirely wrong?
Nowadays, instead of pointing to hormones, biological essentialists tend to point to DNA.
Yeah, because that's what causes like the hormones that then happen. That's where the design comes from. It's your genetics. And what we'll always get is well, some people are genetically this, that, and the other, but like you go to other ways. You can't tell from the genetics. You go for something else. If you really, really can't tell, then it means that they don't produce any gametes anyway, and they can't reproduce. So at what point could you not just say, well, maybe some people are just kind of null in the sex department?
Particularly sex chromosomes, as the imagined place where our sex essences reside. So let's interrogate this.
Well, I mean, that's overwhelmingly the case. Just because there's like aberrations, just because there's mistakes, that doesn't mean that this isn't the case. It doesn't mean that every single person you can tell what their sex is from their chromosomes. But the vast majority you can.
First, if sex essences were harbored in our sex chromosomes, they couldn't be in the X chromosome, since every person has at least one of those. So they must be in the Y chromosome then. But if that's so, wouldn't that suggest that genetic males have a sex essence while genetic females have no essence?
No, that's stupid. You're just trying to pick a particular chromosome. That she mentions XY females, but doesn't bring up the SRY gene. Let's see.
Even if this were true, the human Y chromosome is comprised of approximately 60 million base pairs. So which of these base pairs contain the sex essence then?
Why does there have to be a sex essence? Like, it is a category at the end of the day. But it's something that's meant to describe reproduction, which is done with two things.
Them? All of them? If you search Google Scholar for Y chromosome genetic variation in humans, you'll find a slew of research studies documenting genetic variations in Y chromosomes between individuals and populations. This particular article depicts the phylogeny, or family tree, for common human Y chromosome variants. Does this mean that each variant, represented by different colors here, is a completely distinct male essence then? I'm sure someone out there...
I don't even know what. Like, this essence thing, like... Again, like, let's borrow a fucking line from Katie Montgomery. Like, show me who's actually saying that kind of shit. Like, generally, yeah, there's kind of a cluster of things that people are using when they describe males or females. They're not trying to boil it down super hard to a particular thing. But even then, you've got the SRY gene, so, like... I don't know. It's bizarre. I don't even know whose argument this is a dupe of, if any.
There will say, no, the male sex essence resides entirely in the SRY gene. This is not only a simplistic view of human sex determination, as some XX individuals develop male without the SRY gene, and some XY individuals resides entirely in the SRY gene. This is...
Okay, so she's made your point, Napoleon's right hand.
It's not only a simplistic view of human sex determination, as some XX individuals develop male without the SRY gene.
What's an XX male, for example? De La Chapelle syndrome. So XX males, we're talking about De La Chapelle syndrome. Rare intersex condition. Beat Wikipedia, but let's keep going. 46 XX karyotype develops a male phenotype. Caused by the Y chromosome's SRI gene, which triggers reproductive development, being atypically included in the crossing over of genetic information. So something's gone wrong here, clearly. So this is not what's meant to happen. So, I mean, you can always still say that, like, the design is, like, what is it? Binary. I've never heard of XX males without the SRI gene. This doesn't sound like... It sounds like the SRI gene is still involved. When the X with the SRI gene combines with the normal X, the result is an XX male. So something goes wrong here. It's a little confusing, but symptom is diagnosed 1 in 20,000, much less common than Klinefelter syndrome, which is XXY. That doesn't mean they're half male and half female. It means that the X duplicated. De La Chapelle syndrome. It's thought that it may account for genital ambiguities. I'm trying to get, like, what characterizes this? Oh, signs and symptoms. I could have literally just scrolled back up again. Fuck me. Anyway. Vast majority of XX males have a typically male phenotype. Male typical external genitalia. So they still have testicles. Oh, so we're still defining woman from the medical anomaly. Yep, of course. Yep. Why wouldn't we be? All these bizarre science videos from trans people are exactly the same in that respect. Typical body. Typical in most cases, to be fair, by the look of it. In all reported cases, individuals have been sterile with azoospermia, so they don't produce sperm. So they don't function as males in terms of reproduction. You know what I mean? Many of them remain undiagnosed until seeking treatment for fertility. So yeah, it's something that can happen, for sure. What's the other one? Developed female with SRI. Is this going to be Swyer syndrome? Woman with 46XY. I'm sure that's Swyer syndrome. Swyer syndrome. Wow, I was right. Imagine that. Sex development is not typical for the affected individual's chromosome pattern. Girls and women typically have 2X. In Swyer syndrome, they have 1X and 1Y in each cell that have female reproductive structures. They have some internal female reproductive structures. Uterus, fallopian tube, not functional, gonads. So again, another thing where it can happen, but they don't even actually function as the sex that they're supposed to, in terms of, like, sex being reproduction. It doesn't say, like, how it happens. Causes? Variants in the SRI gene found approximately 15%. Provides instruction per making a protein called sex-determining region Y. SRY genes variants that cause Swyer syndrome prevent production of the sex-determining region Y. So they probably should have come out as a male, but something's gone wrong. Without functional sex-determining region Y, a fetus will not develop testes, but will develop female typical, internal, external. So stuff goes wrong sometimes. You end up with people that don't match what the binary is supposed to be. Does that mean that there's not a binary? Arguably not. Especially when both of these cases, we're talking about, this is one report of fertility, but it's extremely rare as far as I can tell.
And some XY individuals develop female and may even give birth despite having it, but it also ignores the many variables
Yeah, it may even give birth. That seems extremely rare.
Variations that exist in the human SRY gene. This is the NCBI page for the SRY.
Like, if we're trying to say you can't really boil down sex to a very specific thing or essence, then like maybe, but like that doesn't mean that trans is like, that doesn't mean that people can change sex. It doesn't mean that sex is mutable. It doesn't mean that there's more than two sexes. It doesn't mean that sex is like a spectrum or anything like that.
Y gene. And all of these different notations that I've highlighted in red at the bottom of the schematic represent a different documented SRY gene variant. As you can see, there are many of them. Not only is there variation in contemporary humans' SRY genes, but if you look back through evolution, you'll find that the SRY gene is only about 200 million years old. Platypuses don't have an SRY gene. Does that mean that they don't have sex essences then?
We're just arguing with something no one's saying. Like, this is so stupid. This is really dumb. This is like actually moronic, frankly. When do we get off this slide? I'm not listening to this shit.
So they're lost. Essentialism is a very compelling psychological phenomenon. Many of us have a strong gut feeling that there must be essential differences between the sexes or
Well, there is. There is, just not in the way that you're putting it, because you're putting it in a way that you get to decide how it goes so that you can control how it's wrong. You know what I mean? I think Swire fertility is that theoretically they can carry IVF. Okay, fair enough. Which isn't quite the same, I guess, as fertility. The species other than humans determine sex differently than humans do. Yes, how is that relevant to us? True. I mean, hey, species other than humans have to have some understanding of sex. Otherwise, how do you stop all the male deer just fucking each other? How do you stop all the male dogs just fucking each other? They have to like find suitable mates, and they have ways of like determining it, like through things like pheromones and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So every time a human loses its legs, the human race becomes less bipedal. Yeah, exactly. Like there's humans out there that only have one leg. That means you can't say that humans are bipedal anymore. You're starting to get it. I'm glad. Those born with these particular DSD conditions are the exceptions that prove the rule. Yeah.
between people of different races or ethnicities, and so forth. But this is all in our heads, as essentialism is fundamentally incompatible with biological complexity and natural variation.
Yeah, the kind of essentialism that you're describing maybe, but you haven't disproved any kind of binary. You've made up some bizarre set of arguments that I've never heard in my life. You show me someone, I'll say that they're wrong, sure.
Another way to conceptualize observed sex differences, one that is especially common in gender-critical
Sex-gender distinction, biological and wholly distinct. Gender is not wholly distinct from sex. Sex is not wholly distinct from gender. Do people think this? Quite possibly. But like, it's obvious that that's not true because gender is derived from sex. So like, identity, behaviors, roles act. Identity of what? Behaviors of what? Roles of what? Sex. So this is already another dumb argument. Like, you can take down dumb arguments that you made up yourself very fucking easily. You know what I mean?
circles is the sex-gender distinction. The belief that sex, aka the body, is biological and wholly distinct from gender, aka the mind, and consisting of our identities, behaviors, roles, etc., which is presumed to be purely the product of socialization. This view was popular with psychologists in the mid to late 20th century, and also with many feminists during that time, as it suggests that male and female gender roles might eventually change or be eliminated by restructuring society. Today's gender-critical activists continue to promote this view.
Do they? Show me an example. Who's doing this?
Although truth be told, many vacillate between
There's not going to be an example, is there? Which gender criticals are you talking about? I probably disagree with them too. You can't fully separate gender from sex. And I disagree with people that think otherwise, quite frankly. Doesn't matter who they are. I'm so fucking paranoid. I hate when like a spider appears and then disappears, because it could be anywhere now. Amazing. Anyway.
between the sex-gender distinction and essentialism, depending upon whichever best suits the particular anti-trans argument they are trying to make.
We're always framing it around being trans or anti-trans. It's like, it's a big clue. That this person might actually just be a raging narcissist, and everything here is secondary to that. They seem to forget that we're animals. Yeah, seems that way. Seems that way.
Later in this video, I will provide definitive evidence that this sex-gender distinction is incorrect. As I argue in chapter 13 of my book Excluded.
Oh, so for now you're just making shit up. Okay, amazing. Holistic view, sex is multifaceted, variable, and somewhat malleable. How is sex malleable?
Biological variation. We may be socialized in similar ways, but we also have highly individualized personal experiences.
Like, this is, like, I guess we're gonna explain it. This is how most people explain it, though. Oh, well, it's very complicated. Well, that doesn't answer anything. That doesn't say anything as to what you actually think is going on here. So, like, if all you have to say is it's complicated, why would I listen to you? So sex gender distinction is incorrect. Well, this person actually believes that sex and gender are multifaceted, variable, and somewhat malleable. That's what they believe. I guess we're going to get onto this. So here we go. Sex is a collection of sexually dimorphic traits. I wonder if they put these in any kind of order. You know what I mean? Do they at least acknowledge that there's an importance here? And if you can stop here, then you can stop here. If you can't stop here because it's not clear from these, you can go down. You can keep looking. Wait, what other reproductive organs are there? Oh, man.
And somewhat malleable. What do I mean by that? Well, let's start with multifaceted. Rather than being one thing, sex is a collection of sexually dimorphic traits.
Yeah, are we gonna talk about the order of importance of these? Because there is an order of importance here.
Meaning they occur in two clusters. There are numerous primary sex characteristics, so called because they're present at birth. This includes sex chromosomes and different reproductive organs such as gonads and genitals. Then there's the ratio of sex hormones, estrogens and androgens. As I said, all of us have both types of hormones in our system, albeit in differing amounts. These hormones give rise to so-called secondary sex.
Yeah, what are other reproductive organs? What does that mean? You've already covered the reproductive organs. That's gonads and genitals.
Characteristics that typically arise during puberty. Examples include facial hair in men, breast development in women, differences in height, muscle fat distribution, and so on. While all these
these come very secondarily to all this. If you know all of this, it doesn't matter if they've got tits. If they've got a dick, they're still a man, and maybe they got fat and that's why they have tits.
Traits are sexually dimorphic, each one shows variability, and maybe.
So why is it that like 99% of people follow a very specific pattern when it comes to chromosomes, gonads, and genitals? And why is it that those that don't, it's because of things that went wrong? It's because something happened that shouldn't have happened. Why does that happen then?
They fall in between or outside of what most people consider to be standard for female or male, as is the case for intersex people. Depending on how you define it, somewhere between 1 and 2% of the population is intersex with regards to one or more of these traits. This image is from a 2017.
Oh, this image. Okay, I can't see that for shit. But okay, great, amazing.
Scientific American issue on the science of sex and gender, and it illustrates the many different ways in which people can be intersex.
But none of this disproves the binary, so I don't know.
Now, simplistic claims about biological sex typically ignore all of this variability.
I don't. I acknowledge all this shit.
Likely because of the binary way biology and genetics are presented in K-12 schooling.
Any excuse to be a snob about how much more educated you are than everyone else, eh, Julia? Any excuse. Reeks of insecurity. Reeks of, I really have to prove that I'm a woman even though I'm a man. Like, come on. Was it a lesbian convention? Was that what she was barred from? They always carrying up about something, these people.
And in pop science news stories. Specifically, most people seem to think that genes act in a deterministic manner, much like light switches, turning traits either on or off. When in reality, humans have around 25,000 genes, which make proteins that interact with one another in all sorts of complex ways. Here are a few illustrations.
Well, yeah, but there's specific parts of genes and stuff that control things like your sex. There's parts of genes that are responsible for the processes that make you into a sexually mature male or female. Is that not true?
Of this figure shows the sex hormone biochemical pathway. with testosterone and androgen and estradiol and estrogen highlighted in red. As you can see, many proteins, shown in blue, are involved in converting these hormones from one to the other, as well as to other related hormones. One can readily imagine how small differences in the amount or function of any of these proteins may affect the overall outcome to some degree.
Yeah, of course, but that's not what's supposed to happen. Because what's supposed to happen is you're either a sexually functional male or sexually functional female. What happens to make that otherwise? They're like genetic mistakes and stuff, you know?
But it doesn't stop there. Once you have estradiol, it can bind to one of two estrogen receptors, which all of us possess and which are capable of interacting with many other proteins to control gene regulation. Androgen receptors act in an analogous fashion. Once again, small differences in the amount or function of any of these proteins have the potential.
It's almost like males and females are the same species or something. That Scientific American chart is a joke. It makes no sense, repeatedly relies on the sex binary it's rejecting. Yeah, they often do. I have a document somewhere, like, depicting all the different kinds of karyotypes and shit like that you get and what they basically mean. None of it disproves the binary. What it proves is that there's a fucking hell of a lot of us. So the chances are there's going to be the odd person where some kind of genetic mistake is going to happen. You know what I mean? That's just kind of how it is.
To shift the overall output to some degree. Here's one more example. As previously mentioned, people imagine sex determination as a simple process, where if you have a Y chromosome or the SRY gene, you develop male. But there are actually many other genes and proteins involved in this process, and each may contribute to potential variability.
None of which explain why there's only two gonads, two gametes. None of which explain why the only way humans have ever reproduced is with a male and a female. That was roundly rejected and explained well by the paradox insecure. I might have a look. A lot of that kind of stuff is like so long. Like it takes fucking time to like disprove this kind of shit because, well, I mean, it clearly took time to fucking put this shit together. So hey, and then, you know, the truth is like getting its pants on when the lie is halfway around the world. Ultimately, that's kind of how that is. So.
As an aside, this sex determination diagram also highlights the fact that during embryonic development, we all have the capacity to develop either female or male anatomies if exposed.
Yeah, we're the same fucking species. Like when a baby comes out, it's probably hard to tell initially until you look between their legs. When like a baby of any kind, like you see a puppy, do you know straight away if it's a male or a female? Massive variety within each half of the binary isn't disproving the binary. Yeah, true. Proves that defects exist because that happens somewhere. Yeah, things go wrong. Yeah. Why does that mean there's not a gender binary?
Goes to the right signal.
Sex binary, excuse me. I'm the one now conflating terms. I do apologize.
This further challenges the notion of fixed predetermined sexes and sex essences. Anyway, as a result,
Does it? How so?
either female or male anatomies if exposed to the right signals. This further challenges the notion.
Well, yeah, but wouldn't that rely on like you exposing yourself to something that wouldn't normally happen? If that makes sense.
Of fixed predetermined sexes and sex essences. Anyway, as a result of all these intricate.
I don't really see how this person has shown that, but okay. Like you can have variations within a sex. That doesn't mean that sex is bimodal at all, because that would suggest that there is male and female essences. Like if it's bimodal, there has to be like male and female essences, and then some people have a bit of one and most of the other, or a bit of both. You know what I mean? Like bimodal still relies on there being two categories. So it's just stupid. We couldn't even diagnose DSDs without understanding of binary sex. Yeah, true.
Genetic, biochemical, and developmental pathways, most human traits are complex traits. And rather than producing strictly binary outcomes,
they fit. They give a lot of different outcomes because humans are all very different. But they still fit in with these categories.
they give rise to bell curves, where most individuals are clustered around some average outcome. But
that's still what they're talking about is bimodal. There's two bell curves. One where the peak is like perfectly male and perfectly female at the other end. You still need the binary for that. You still need two sexes. You literally already know this.
But there will always be outliers who differ from the norm. When it comes to sexually dimorphic traits, the outcome is typically overlapping bell curves. In some cases,
No, I do not agree with this. Your gonads do not follow this. Your chromosomes might. If they do, it's because of aberrations, it's because of mistakes, it's because of things that shouldn't even be happening in the first place. And things that, if there were less of us, wouldn't even fucking exist, probably, because of how rare most of them are. Like, something like gender, I guess you could describe this way. But like sex, they're complex traits. The thing is, there's still a role that you fill, whether one or the other. You know what I mean? There's still a role that you fill. How come then babies are only made with a penis and a fucking vagina?
such as primary sex characteristics, there may be relatively little overlap, while in others,
Well, no, there really isn't any overlap. And what overlap there is, they're mistakes. They're not meant to happen. Not the people are mistakes. The thing that happened to make them the way they are mistakes. People with DSD don't want to be associated with LGBT, but LGBT are always associating. Yeah. I mean, some people with them seem fine with it. If you get trans people with DSDs, they're usually very excited about that whole thing because they think it makes them somewhat female when they're male, or the other way around. Which DSDs make one a safe person, which make one a potential predator. Yeah.
secondary sex characteristics such as height, there may be significant overlap between the sexes.
Height isn't really a sex characteristic. It's just that males tend to grow higher than females. I don't know why this is a sex characteristic suddenly. Is eye color a sex characteristic? What else can we think of?
In addition to the fact that every one of these sexually dimorphic traits shows variability,
Yeah, sexually dimorphic traits is not the same as, like, what makes your sex. Like, sexual dimorphic, like, that's what we apply after the fact. The sexes exist, and that's what we observe. Like, oh man.
these traits may not always align within the same individual, as is the case for many intersex and trans people.
If trans people are being brought into this because they've changed, like, some of their traits artificially, that super doesn't fucking count. Let's see that happen naturally, then.
For instance, while I may have or have had certain male sex characteristics, I also have certain female sex characteristics as a result of hormonally transitioning.
Yeah, because you did it, like, artificially. That's not the same thing. You can't, like, talk about genetics and then talk about how you confound them by changing things artificially. That doesn't make any sense. That's got nothing to do with genetics at that point, because you're not changing your genetics. You're finding ways to make yourself resemble more the other sex. That's all there is to it. You're an imitation, just like me. That's all there is to it.
The very fact that trans people are even able to hormonally transition brings us to the third point.
Because, like, your genetics determine, like, where your fucking hormones end up going, like which one you have more of, how they're produced, etc. After the fact, changing them artificially, knowing that the hormones are what actually affects the shit, and the genetics are just telling you what to do, that you've not made any comment on the genetics. You've just taken the output and changed the output artificially. I remember a group of TRAs calling a lioness with a hormone imbalance a trans lion. Oh yeah, there was like a lioness with a mane and that was trans or something. Like, yeah, of course. And it's all like ideology, fuck me. It's all like ideology kind of applied after the fact, you know?
In addition to being multifaceted and variable, sexually dimorphic traits are often somewhat malleable. This is especially true for secondary sex characteristics.
Yeah, but changing your secondary sex characteristics doesn't change your sex. Even changing your gonads doesn't, because you can't swap one for another. You can only take off. And if you chop a man's dick off, he's not a woman now. He's not neither sex now. He's a man.
Like I said, we all possess both estrogen
And none of this fucking matters anyway, because you'll just believe it's something you identify as and that makes it true.
and androgen receptors, and thus have the capacity to respond to both types of hormones. Other sex characteristics
We're the same species, amazing, crazy.
may be removed or reconfigured, as often occurs with gender-affirming procedures and surgeries.
So sex isn't malleable. You're not proving that at all. Gender critical gamete gambit, Jesus Christ. It's so terrible, Faith. You can tell how like politically charged this person is. Brain sex, probably bullshit. Probably says that it's bullshit, to be fair. Gender identity, expression, orientation have nothing to do with your sex. I know. I'm not gonna do much more of this because it's driving me insane.
I should mention that when I
Don't trans femmes on estrogen still have a much higher testosterone? Yeah, if they're not if they're not testosterone blocking, should I say? If they haven't had surgery, any of that shit.
first made this slide, I listed chromosomes as unalterable, by which I meant that trans people's DNA sequences don't change during transition. However, a recent study has shown that gender-affirming hormone therapy changes sex-specific DNA methylation patterns.
Yeah, again, you're still changing things after the fact based on what you know hormones do. I'll have one more song to close us out. I want to watch something else. I have to stop at some point. Oh, so this is the poetry, I guess. Swing our arms around, because that might make your poetry interesting. Who knows?
I'm going to do the song now. I was going to close with the set, and maybe this isn't the closing song. Just do a couple in.
Oh my god, it's almost 30 seconds in. Always fucking talking so much before the song. Just play the fucking song, bro. Can she just not play like normally? Like I said, I'm cool with this technique and stuff. Is it all she can do though? That's bizarre. I've never seen someone only learn how to play like this and not like, you know.
Yes, you call it homicide. It's so that I'm guilty as charged, and I will live my life at once because I killed Sting. I have to admit I like that man. There's say more only because the drum and guitar were the one. What's up with this pretentious self-entitled fool? Don't suck much down and then got up. Call the police. I killed Sting. He didn't kill Sting.
Jesus, that's rough. That's rough. Anyway, there we go. Julia Serano. Amazing, amazing, amazing.